I always like to start an interview cleaning my glasses.
Yeah.
Because it makes me feel very sophisticated. And
it's just a move to make you appear more intelligent.
It is.
Yeah.
It's actually my go-to move. It helps me focus.
Right.
When I'm listening to somebody, it actually, having something to do can help you focus.
Well, it also brings attention to you in a way.
It does, doesn't it? All right. Plus, I'm such a dad, I carry this and clean everybody's glasses.
So kind.
And of course, you know where I got that from.
Where?
My dad.
There you go.
So we eventually turned into our parents.
That's a frightening thought.
Yeah. So listen, Phil, you've given over 2,000 presentations.
That's correct.
In over 50 countries.
Right.
Across 5 continents.
That is right.
And you are not to be confused with the soccer player,
Absolutely
Phil Jones.
not.
No. This is the Phil Jones. Also, you've written 5 international best-selling books.
You bet.
And were the youngest ever winner of the coveted British Excellence in Sales and Marketing Award.
That is also true.
That's pretty cool. Now, you have a podcast as well.
I do.
Yep. And one of the Words with Friends is
right.
what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things you do is you just say a word.
That's right.
To your guest, and then they're to respond based on how that word makes them feel.
Something like that.
Sort of. Okay. So I thought that might be a fun way to start.
Alrighty.
Because I think great artists steal, so I'm just going to steal that from you.
Perfect.
And let's see how it works. So, humility.
Okay. Humility. What a great word. And it immediately makes me jump to the word humble. I guess is the place that I jump to on that first of all. When you think about that word humility, it doesn't show up in the world that often. Is that what we often see more is people looking to be egotistical or have a brag or look to be able to say that they are more than what they are and hope that they get to be able to grow into that. Humility is something missing, I think. You're making me think. Thank you.
Well, so, one of the things that we see a lot in the industry, speaking industry, is the diva mentality.
Right.
This idea that somehow when you get to a certain stage, 5 international best-selling books and 5,000, or 2,000 speeches in 50 countries, that somehow then you're a rock star and that people should cater to you.
And bow to you.
That's
you. Right.
Yeah. And on a recent episode of the podcast, Tim Sanders and I were talking about this, and he articulated something that I've felt for a long time, which is we're just vendors.
Right.
That's all. We're just vendors. So, we're probably the most overpaid vendor at the conference as well.
Maybe. Have you seen the price of coffee recently at some of those events? I mean, that's pretty overpriced.
Touche. Well said. Very well done. So, given that, how do you see your role as a professional speaker when you go into a conference?
Okay. So during a conference, it's often that you're the vehicle to be able to create a takeaway. That's the way I see it. So can you be the memorable ingredient that meant all the important stuff that the event needed to get across, whether it was a theme, it was a change in culture, whether they had a number of big corporate announcements? Could you create something as a moment that happens on that stage that everybody 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months after the fact has the ability to be able to say, oh, that was when that British guy spoke about those words thing, right? Yeah. So I like to be able to create a lasting effect that becomes an anchor or a pivot point for the corporate information.
Yeah.
I think also we're intelligent entertainment. We're a point that sits in the agenda of a 1-day, a 3-day, a 5-day conference where the audience get to be able to sit back a little and enjoy, let their minds open up a touch, and maybe have some fun during that period too. So it isn't necessarily like you are the content master that is going to solve everybody's problems in that given moment in time. Is can you make people laugh? Can you make them feel something? Can you insert some ideas that they hadn't thought of before? And can you be that outside special sauce?
Yeah.
And I like to be able to focus that special sauce piece. If you think you're the main meal, you think you're the entree, that's where you find yourself in a really dangerous space. Mm-hmm. If what you want to show up as is that super hot sauce that everybody talks about after the fact, but you don't damage the entree, what you do is you just add to it, you've probably got it something right when it comes to a speaking business.
It's nice. And how has your vision for yourself as a speaker changed over the years, if it has?
It's changing all the time. It's not necessarily had these big like landmark points where it's pivoting from one to the next. It's really been an evolving period of time.
But when you started speaking, did you have the intention to become like a world traveling big name speaker?
I just wanted to be better. That's all I wanted to be. When I started this business, it was 2008. I just bought down a property business that was doing particularly well. The economic climate meant that it was no longer going to have any legs in it. And I was wondering what I was going to do next. And while I was figuring out what I wanted to do next, things like chambers of commerce and business networking groups would invite me in, and they asked me to be able to speak to their members about things they could do to trade out of a recession. So I wasn't trying to be a professional speaker. I was speaking about my experience giving back to groups of people. People liked it and said, hey, could we learn some more about this? So I started my training business by creating a one-day sales training program off the back of those speeches to allow those people to be able to buy something from me that previously they couldn't. Yeah. Then I found that what I needed to be able to do was to fill those workshops if I wanted to keep that turning. So I would speak, typically for free, to sell the workshop that then became a coaching business, that then became a consulting business, that then became a corporate training business. So speaking was part of that. I didn't know about the rockstar speaking space. Mm-hmm. I really didn't. It wasn't anything I had a huge amount of transparency towards. I had idols and greats like Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and people I'd looked up to that way around. But this speaking circuit that exists in North America in the way that I now know it to be true, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. I thought the people that stood up on stage and delivered keynotes were largely literal rock stars or sports superstars or somebody with a gold medal in some way. I didn't think that was an option for me.
So what percentage of your work is keynote focused and what percentage is workshop focused?
I'm probably one of the busiest speakers on the circuit. So percentage terms, I'm about a third. So I'm about a third keynotes. I'm around a third of workshop-y type stuff. And then a third of my business is associated towards books and other licensing products, etc. Yeah. So that's the general split. I'm on stage around 100 to 120 times a year.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I do a number of virtual programs and those kind of things too. And the reason for it and the reason why I'm so busy as I am right now is my business is always in transition. What that means is you've got the business that you are growing and the business that you're running. When you're growing a business aggressively and you're running an existing big business, then the overlap on those means that something has to give, and typically it's your schedule. So my current point right now is part of the business that I was running that was good business for me 2015, 2016. End of this year, I let some of that go, creating the space to be able to operate in more of the bigger echelon and hopefully buy myself some time back.
Yeah. It's interesting. I sometimes think about that concept as like new company and old company.
That's right.
And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that type of thinking is comfortable, even though it presents certain amount of anxieties because the future is uncertain. We can't predict a result. But it is a very entrepreneurial way of thinking. We're very interested in the future. We're very interested in reconfiguring what we have to turn it into something new that is more desirable to us. But it's not necessarily how everybody thinks.
Nope.
And so I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on how people can get more comfortable with that constant state of flux, that constant reconfiguration.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that will make you become more comfortable with it is looking at the reality of not accepting that kind of mindset. If you don't accept that kind of mindset, you get stuck in a box. If you get stuck in a box, you build a reputation within that box. You can't break out of it. Example would be is that if you are a really good workshop speaker at $2,500 delivering somebody else's material, and you stay in that space because you're comfortable, when you stay in that space for 3, 5, 7 years, you've got no chance of ever breaking it. If you don't stay if you, by alternative, give yourself the permission to continually be moving, then you're almost on a ladder with one foot always on the next step that comes up. And then as you become more confident in that new space, you move the left leg up to be able to step into the new space. So it's the risk of getting stuck is the thing that I'm most fearful of. I don't want 20 years at the same level in this business.
Yeah.
Or in any business for that matter.
Why? What drives you? What's the thing that that drives that fear behind the sameness?
Okay. If I asked a room full of people whether they wanted to be good at something, better at something, or best at something, what do you think most people would pick?
Most people would probably say, I want to be best at something.
Yeah. That's what almost everybody says. They say they want to be their best. What I've learned to be true is that is a stupid mindset.
Don't mince your words.
Right, but I think it is. And I'll explain why. Have you ever said the words to somebody, don't worry, you tried your best?
I tend to not say that, but
Right.
I know what you mean. It is a typical.
We say
thing
those
to say, yeah.
words, and we know it's not true.
Yeah.
Not only that, many people have used it as an excuse in themselves, as I was trying my best, and again known that was just a pack of lies.
Yeah.
So we've learned to believe that best is a finite destination that is often untrue.
Yeah.
Not only that, is because it's a finite destination that's often untrue, it's a ceiling. With it being a ceiling, that feels to me like it's remarkably limiting and hugely frustrating. If you think about a point in your life where you struggled with something, it could be as simple as being able to say, tie your shoelaces. You may have proclaimed to parents and said, look, I'm trying my best, I'm trying my best. It isn't until you decided to shift your focus away from best and to better that all of a sudden you learn to be able to quickly go do that thing.
Yeah.
So the reason that I don't want to get stuck is that my continued quest is better. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't this finite destination that says, here is where I want to end up, this is the destination. It's just, can I be better tomorrow than I was today?
Yeah.
And sometimes that measure is speaking fee, sometimes that's the stages that you're on, sometimes it's the time I spend with my family. There's all sorts of measures that we can bring towards what better looks like. But if I'm not working on that in some way, I feel like I'm dead inside and it's probably time to give up.
Yeah. That actually brings us back to the conversation around humility. Recently, Amy and I were watching the Netflix special with Beyonce.
Okay.
And her whole rehearsal process and performance into Coachella. And it was remarkable.
I've seen it. It's great.
You've seen it. Okay. So you may recall that one of the things she says, and I'll paraphrase, in that film is that it takes an enormous amount of humility to rehearse.
Right.
And I'm wondering what your process is around getting better as a speaker.
Yeah.
How do you, because look, anytime you do anything in front of large audiences, you're going to get criticism. It's just
You bet.
It's just part of the
100%.
process. Write books, whatever. If you want to do something in the world in a big way, there are always going to be people who don't like it, and that can be challenging to deal with. And our relationship to that criticism generally changes over time. The more successful and the more comfortable you get, often the easier it is to deal with that because you feel more established.
Yep.
But sometimes for some folks, they take less risks as they get more successful because they don't want to risk what they have. So what's your process for getting better as a speaker?
I'm very fortunate in the fact that I don't have cookie cutter type scenarios. So it's not, Phil, can you deliver a 45, 60-minute speech? Stages look something like the same. Corporate audiences look something like the same. If I do 120 events in the year, the similarities may exist in 18 of them, and the variances then overlap like crazy. So it makes you think. You have to think about different constraints of, is it a 4-hour event? Is it a 2-hour event? Where do the breaks sit? Is it 27 people in a room? Is it 2,700 people in the room? What happened before the event? What happened after your contribution within the event? What's the energy of the organization at that moment in time? What is the key output they're looking for the bigger picture, as well as the output they're looking for from your small contribution? So all of these different variables make for me a really exciting challenge. Because it means that what you can do is bring a higher level of consciousness to what your deliverable is. It's not about the speech, it's about the result that you can create for your client.
Right. Yeah.
And quite often they don't know what they really want from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They really don't. They know what good enough is, they know what doesn't suck is, but what they don't know is what could create wow. That's where your challenge starts to come in prep from being better, is to start to look at all the things that they would never know to be able to look for. And some of the things I learned from the likes of you and Amy of things like blocking and staging. And I'm weird, right? I need to see, so I don't need an AV check so much for microphones working and that stuff. I need a check of the room.
Yeah.
And I want to make choices about where am I going to enter from? How am I going to greet the person who's going to be introducing me? Am I going to enter stage left or stage right? I do a lot where I leave the stage and I engage with an audience. I want to pick who's going to be where, etc. I don't want to pick on the wrong person. You know, if there's somebody who's an exec that is from a different country that I enter into a piece of role play with and they don't speak English too good, that could be embarrassing. So there's these thousands of micro choices that you have to make. And I enjoy that challenge. Like, I puzzle on it like crazy. I'll live through a speech 100 times in my head before ever opening my mouth. And if any of you would see my journals are crazy. Like, I mind map a speech and it would make no sense to anybody else. But in on that, then I say, where can I play?
Yeah.
Once I've got to this point where I've mapped it out and I'm feeling like, I got this, it's then, what can I do to play today? And that may be a choice of bringing a prop in that I've never tried to be able to use before. That may be can I say that same thing 3 different ways? Can I create a new crafted story towards that piece? And I might take 15 to 20% of what I planned and throw out the plan and create the choice for play.
Yeah.
And that's dependent upon the level of risk associated to the event. You know, if it's a client you've worked with a long time before, you've got familiarity, more room to play. If you learn to be able to feel how much room you've got to be able to play based on the client.
Yeah. If you, if you're a speaker, often you're starting on your own.
Yep.
You don't generally have a big team behind you unless you're an entrepreneur who already has an organization, and then you can draw on the resources to support the operational side of the business. So each individual speaker comes into the work with a certain set of strengths and a certain set of weaknesses. And I'm wondering what you think your strengths are and what your weaknesses are from an operational perspective in terms of running the business, doing all the things that you need to do to advance the mission and grow, your speaking business. And then how do you handle or manage against some of the weaknesses so they don't interfere with your progression?
Okay. Let's start with the biggest weakness is
let's start with your strengths. What do you think your particular strengths are? Like, what do you do really, really well? Besides, of course, perform. I mean, you speak really well. Your content development is outstanding.
From a business point of view, I'm good at being strategic and long-term. I'm good at laying the foundations out to work on tomorrow's business as well as today's work. And everybody in my team sees me for that role. There's nobody else within my organization that has the ability to be able to see.
And that's one of the reasons that companies hire you.
Correct.
That's your secret sauce.
And I believe that that's a really important part of a speaking business too, is congruence. Yeah. Is the stuff that you deliver up on the stage should be the same stuff that you live in your world. If not, there's an issue. Yeah. So yes, I'm good at that stuff. I'm also good at the relationship networking piece, the part of being able to find whether it's strategic relationships that can help create opportunities, whether it's staying front of mind with some of the core clients who could book me again. That networking business development piece is a piece that I really enjoy and that I know I'm good at. I'm also good from a creative point of view to be able to think about marketing direction, to try and take inspiration towards what we can do with content creation or how we can try and test new ideas that I've seen work in other industries and how we can make that work. So I'm always pioneering things that can bring the attention towards our clients, that can move me into a marketplace of one, which is very much what I look at through the buying process. Probably one of the biggest decision triggers that affect success or failure in a speaking business is having got to the short list of 3, how do you become the one?
Correct. Because if you keep ending up on that short list of 3, but you don't get picked, it doesn't matter that you were 3. You could have been 50.
Correct. Yeah. And in the short list of 3, it's not what your price is or how many reps you've got or whether you're competent or whether your content is good enough, etc. It's tiny little micro fractions that give somebody a reason to choose you as opposed to somebody like you. So I'm good at coming up with dozens of reasons that move us into marketplace of one. That would be my core set of strengths. I'm also I've not really thought about this much until you asked the question, but I feel like I'm a strong leader through good delegation. Mm-hmm. I put a lot of trust into my people that work with me, and I expect them to be able to deliver on their responsibilities, not on their tasks. And that means that I have a very autonomous team. I don't have the need to be able to watch over them like a hawk. I don't need to have daily check-ins. They're not waiting on their next job from me. They are all largely independent, largely freelance, largely work from home, but they get stuff done, and I'm continually surprised at how they outperform my expectation in doing so. So I'm good at that stuff.
Yeah.
if I look on the flip side of that and say, where are there areas that I know cost us in the business? The biggest one is my inability to say no. I'm really good at like wanting to help people on things. I'm really good at saying yes. I'm really good at working within the constraints of somebody else's problem.
If I had a nickel for every time I saw one of our colleagues or friends say, "Oh, I just got off the phone with Phil Jones. It was like 20 minutes and he blew my mind and now I know what to do."
Right.
I'm like, well, maybe if I had a nickel for every time Phil did that, that'd be great.
That'd be great. Yeah. No, but I love doing it.
Yeah.
I really love doing it. And within a circle of people that I've predetermined and said that these people matter to me, I think I'm going to keep showing up and keep doing that in that way. But I do it with strangers. I take clients' problems and put them on monkeys on my back. Outside of the scope of the work that we have on board is I find myself up at night worrying about their issues more than the execs within an organization. And I know that hurts my business because it slows me down. It makes me heavy.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm consciously looking to be able to make a change on. Other things that I'm just not great at is I don't want to build a big business. So building and by big business, I mean giant staff, operations, payroll, all of that big long-term thing. So
like all the stuff we've got here at HQ.
You bet. I don't want that middle of a business.
Yeah.
So I very consciously have been building my business to say that I want success at the top end with high fee paying clients, keynotes, etc. And then I want success down at the bottom end with books and Audible programs. And, can I make a little off a lot and then have somebody else's engine do the driving on it? I'll just create the special sauce for them to be able to go make it run. So that's where I've become conscious. I've tried to do the stuff in the middle with online courses and licensing and having people that would teach my content, etc. And I've learned I hate it and I'm not very good at it.
Well, let's talk about licensing just a bit because I think you are doing some licensing.
Yep.
So it sounds like you've tried some licensing that you didn't really like so much, but now you have a different focus. And so I'd love you to unpack that. Like, what have you done that didn't work so well for you? And what are you focusing on now that you think will produce leveraged returns for you over time?
So 2012, 2013, I licensed individuals to have the ability to be able to teach and train my content. And I found, if I'm to summarize, two outcomes. One was the people that were good enough very quickly forgot where they learned their information and started to then call it their own and became competitors of my brand. And I found myself in ugly conversations I just didn't want to be a part of. Or the alternative was that they weren't good enough and that was my fault. And that I was dealing with babysitting a level of incompetence for people who weren't doing the thing they're paid to do. They thought that the license meant instant success, as opposed to an opportunity.
So you're saying your fault in part because you let them through?
Or even, but both that and also that's what their perception of it would be.
Yeah.
That they would be reflecting back to say the reason they're not being successful is something that I'm
not
I
see.
Doing.
They were saying it's your fault.
Correct.
Yes, of course.
Correct. So both of those things. Yeah. So yes, there's the acknowledgement from my point of view of maybe picking the wrong people.
Yeah. This is one of the things that happens in the agency model as well. You bring on a new client, you help that build their career, they get very famous, and then they go, well, what do I need you for?
Right.
Like, well, I helped you get here.
That's right. So the day that you're supposedly getting your payday is the day that they come off the payroll.
Correct. Yeah. Or if things aren't going very well for you, if you're not producing, then you say to the agent, what's your problem? You're not doing for me what you should be doing.
That's right.
It's a really tough business. It's similar. The agency business and the licensing model has some similarities.
Correct. And I think now my movement on licensing has become a really fun revelation, is that many of my books and some of my online content has done better outside of the United States of America than it has in it. So outside of Western speaking countries. So everywhere that we've had success in book translation, we're now pursuing training and product licensing opportunities within countries where I wouldn't have the ability to be able to deliver that material.
Right.
So I can let out the rope on the quality of the deliverables on it when it's in a language that I have no idea of how to police. So recently we've signed a number of licenses through South America, where they are competent high-level training organizations that are using my brand and my content to be able to create training vehicles for themselves that they go out, sell, market, etc. And I take revenue back off the top of that. And that's an exciting approach to licensing that I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
So it sounds like you're focusing on existing training organizations, and then they will take your content, translate it, and start to deliver it, as opposed to just an individual who may not yet already have an organization around them that hopes maybe they'll get rich quick through it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it has immediate inbuilt scale. It's a lot easier for me to be able to vet an organization ahead of time and know what they're about. I can see if the effort is worth the reward. The risk is next to minimal, really, from my point of view. And it leads towards greater goal of growing personal brand. There's a point where I'm at speaking wise right now with where my fee sits and as busy as I am, that if I'm to get less busy and make more money, I need to be famous. And I never set out to want to do that, but if that's what I need to achieve to be able to get to the next level, that's an area that I'm trying to explore right now, is what can be done to be able to grow profile into that level so that there's an element of household name within the business space.
And through what elements are you pursuing that?
So the licensing piece is a part of that, right? If I'm a big deal in Brazil, and you get called in to then go headline a keynote that has 7,500 people in it and high level production value, etc., and then I photograph and leverage that whole thing well, then that feeds back into my North America business. Other things that we're doing to be able to pursue that is very strategic growth through LinkedIn and Instagram and looking to grow profile there, investing in being able to document a huge amount of the work that I do.
Yeah.
So I've kept much of my work a secret. Yeah. So I'm so busy doing it that we're not photographing it and we're not building the brand around it. So I'm trying to do that a little bit more to be able to raise profile. And we speak about an agent, and I'm finally deciding to work with an agent as well. So that is highly likely to be something that is done and dusted before this even gets aired.
Yeah.
I'm meeting with her at an event that I'm keynoting tomorrow. Great. So the person that I think I want to work with.
Great. Now, if I was your agent, I'd be pushing to get you on television program after television program after television program. You should be on as the expert on sales, revenue growth, business development, communications, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on CNBC, CNN, Fox, et cetera, across the board, because you're well designed for that.
It's hard though now to say, well, what is the formula for that success? And I think some of that formula of being on TV so much is a proven success story, but perhaps even historically, because how many people now watch those programs? How many eyeballs of the right kind of people are showing up in those spaces? I think it's a diminishing number, is my personal viewpoint. So
I agree. I think, yes, I agree. There's so many more channels for content distribution now, of course, but there still is a certain cachet, a certain credibility associated with
a badge of honor.
With primetime TV. Exactly. Yes. So from a fame perspective, there are certain things that if we do will raise our level, our profile.
Correct.
Even if you don't sell many more books through that or get gigs directly through it, etc. But it has such a positive effect on the rest of our work. And some people are watching on video. Most people are going to be listening to the podcast, so they don't see you. But you're handsome, you're young. Well, you probably look younger than you are. maybe you're younger than you are, but all the travel,
knows, right?
Yeah, who knows? But you're very handsome. You're charming. You're well dressed. You have a lovely accent, which in America, works very well for you. Not everybody is as well suited for that environment.
Sure.
And what I've found, over the years is, you get in with one place because one producer likes you, then the host likes you, they keep bringing you back, then everybody else starts calling, And
I love that. The challenge in doing that is schedule.
Yeah.
So for any of those environments that they want you to be able to go on a show, it's like email comes in on a Monday, what are you doing on Tuesday or Thursday of that given week? And at this point in time, I'm booked through April of next year. So I'm booked 9 months out ahead with limited windows in time. And this is why I have to start to be able to carve space back out in the business. And the hardest part of growing a speaking business is turning down gigs. Because we condition ourselves in a way that every gig is a good gig. Like that is even through the industry can be seen as like, oh, somebody wants you to show up.
Yeah.
Your ego kicks up and you're like, they want me? And they're going to pay me to do a thing that I love?
Of course.
Like, hell yeah, let me at it.
Yeah.
So being brave enough to start to say, I've got to put new boundaries around what's a hell yes.
Yeah.
I think is what will carve out some of the space in the years to come for me to be able to do more of that profile raising work.
So let's move into that conversation a little bit more.
Okay.
Because you are remarkably skilled at sales training.
Thank you.
Remarkably skilled. And so we want to make sure that our listeners get tools and
You bet.
techniques and tactics and strategies that they can use to help sell better. Now, one of our faculty members, one of our clients, somebody that I work with and have become close with over the years, is a speaker named Andrew Davis. And of course, you're friendly with Andrew
Sure.
as well. And Andrew has been on the podcast. And his episode on the podcast is still one of the most popular episodes on the podcast. And one of the things that Andrew does is he makes sure to turn down at least 50% of the offers that he gets.
Okay.
He says if you're not turning down 50%, then you need to raise your fees.
Okay.
So what's your perspective on that? Given that you were just saying, sometimes it's hard to say no, and when people say,
I guess my perspective on it is I'm a little more organic. And
yeah, he's a very analytical,
Yeah.
tracks everything,
I know.
knows the average, fee price to the penny.
he does, and then I challenge him on what his average fee growth has been over the last 5 years, and that's a number that I know remarkably well that is different from his analytics. So we can all choose to measure what matters to us, right?
Yeah.
That's the key thing. And when it comes to making decisions about gigs, my bigger thing is how soon is it? Like, when is it? If somebody wants me to deliver a gig on Tuesday next week and I'm home, and the gig is in Manhattan and I can take the car to it and I can be home in time for lunch, would I be open to being able to consider a price less than my standard fee for that right now? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
If it's October 2020 and it's in Peru, there's every possibility that what I'm going to be doing is reaching for my 2022 pricing. Mm-hmm. And I'm actively always looking at what the next price point is that I'm looking to be able to grow into and what's it going to take to be able to get there. The second I've been paid it 3 times, it's my new fee.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
That's how you. So if you've been paid that fee 3 times, you immediately raise it.
Yes.
So you're.
But I'm aspirational. I'm aspirationally.
That means you're raising your prices a lot.
Yes.
If you're doing over 100 gigs a year, and you're raising it every 3 gigs, that fee.
No, I'm raising it every time I've been paid that new fee 3 times.
I see. So, for example, you may talk to somebody today, you get that fee, but then the sales conversation you have the next day nets slightly lower fee, like a previous fee,
Correct.
Based on the negotiation.
You bet.
Yeah.
And sometimes, right, I think you want a solid piece of advice for speakers is firstly understand you'll never get paid more money than you ask for. And I know that sounds so simple.
It's true. It's good.
But the mistake that almost every speaker makes is they assume that the client is responsible for how much you're worth.
Yeah.
And there needs to become a level of bravery that is attached to your ability to be able to ask for money. I've been successful as a speaker for free. I've been successful for a speaker at 500. I've been successful for a speaker at 1,500, 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, etc. Every price point that has existed right up until where I'm at right now, I like to believe that I've been really good for that price point. Mm-hmm. And I think that is an important track that everybody should run on. The worst place you want to end up is you don't want feedback like he was pretty good, but for that fee.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I'm close with the founder of a big speakers bureau.
Right.
And he told me a story about a client that he'd been working with for 10 years who has always gotten good feedback, 100% good feedback. I mean, this is someone who is just a mainstay of solid work. And the speaker went into the speech, and the meeting planner called up his agent and said, I don't really think it was worth it. He said, oh my God, I've never heard that before. That's terrible. And she said, yeah, it just really wasn't worth 40 grand.
Right.
And Martin said, wait, what? Hold on, that's not his fee. His fee is 15. Let me just go check because I want to make sure there wasn't a clerical error or something. So I went and checked, and he said, no, you guys paid 15. You did not pay 40, you paid 15. And she said, oh, in that case, he was great. He was fantastic, lots of value. Thanks. Boom, that's it. Right. End of conversation.
So you've got to get that confidence to be able to rise a fee with the credibility of knowing that you can still outperform expectation at whatever that level of fee is.
Yeah.
And that's why I look for the bravery of Firstly, I negotiate probably 2/3 of my current inquiries myself.
Well, you're particularly skilled.
Well, I think it's also part of the reason somebody should choose me. So it forms part of my sales process, is that if I can touch it and I want to put myself into a marketplace of one and everybody else had agent, bureau, executive handler that be able to reach out to be able to negotiate it, and the client gets to speak to Phil direct, I'm already further on in the conversation because I'm discussing with the meeting planner the event itself. I'm discussing what their objectives and goals are. Everybody else is a speaker packet and a fee.
Well, this is interesting because it's actually very meta.
Yeah.
You know, you're being hired to teach them how to sell better.
Right.
So they're evaluating your salesmanship throughout that process. Whether they're consciously doing it or not, I think they are. Just like when they're considering bringing us for communication training, public speaking training, they're evaluating how we show up in the world as communicators, which I think they should be.
They should be.
And if they can't follow what we're saying, if we're very confusing and all over the place, then they may say, how are they going to teach us to do it better if they can't do it? So it seems to me
all the time. And one of my favorite things that often happens is I'll have a call with a client about booking me to be able to speak, and we talk about some of the metrics that they want to be able to move with their people. One of those metrics is often that what we're looking to be able to do is to maintain a premium price more often. What we're looking to be able to do is to give away less discounts. What we're looking to be able to do is to be able to charge more for some of our higher level services. These are things they're looking for them to be able to do. I then talk to them about my fee and they ask me to negotiate. My response is typically, you realize that if what I do here is that I reduce my fee, that you've just picked the wrong speaker. Typically gaining that kind of level of response. What I'd like you to be able to do is to use this negotiation as part of your introduction for when you bring me out on stage, to be able to talk about the fact that you've maybe paid more than you've ever paid for a speaker in the past, but that's exactly what you're looking for this audience to be able to do. So we actually utilize it to be able to better play it out that way. And you know, I'm a stickler for questions, right? Questions are my way of controlling almost any given conversation. And I think speakers are awful at it when an inquiry comes their way. Firstly, because they're excited.
Yeah.
Right. Typical inquiry comes in, and the inquiry comes in as an email or a contact form on your website. And it's normally the same thing, right? It's, are you available? And what's your fee? That is the typical inbound speaking inquiry. And then the typical response to that, are you available and what's your fee, is, yes, I'm available, and what's your budget?
Yeah, right.
Which is stupid.
Yeah.
Straight up stupid. So if people are looking for a real practical takeaway as to how they can command their fee more successfully from a speaking inquiry point of view, is to take control of the conversation. Firstly, what you might look to be able to respond with is you're going to say, as it currently stands, yes, I am available on that date, and I've placed it on hold for you. So just kick off right there and be able to take some control of it. The second thing, instead of talking about your fee, you might say something like, what is it about me and my work that makes you think I might be a good fit for your event? Those two questions alone put you back in complete control. What then happens is the client sells you on you. So they then start to unpack, well, I've seen you speak here, or I've seen this happen there, etc. Next question I might ask is, so what is your experience of working with a paid professional speaker? And you'll note even in the verbiage there, when I say paid professional speaker as opposed to professional speaker, I've indicated that there's some money attached to this. They're going to say, oh no, we've booked a number of people in the past. I say, who have been some of the most memorable that you've worked with in the past? Now, if they say that what we've had is that we've had Mel Robbins, and that we've had Kendra Hall, and that we've had Ron Tite, and like these people were all great, what does that do to my confidence? Instantly, I'm realizing that I'm in good company and that they understand what they're getting into. Yeah. If they say back to that, they say, well, mostly we've had internal speakers from the corporate team, or we've had some industry speakers from our vendors that have come up on stage. We've never actually reached out to work with a speaker in the past. Now I know I've got to have a very different conversation when it comes to positioning how they might work. So the first thing I'd look to do is to help educate them on the landscape of professional speakers, to then let them know where I fit within that landscape, and ask if that was the kind of expectation they had, and if they had a different expectation, can I help recommend them to somebody who might fit within the lines of those expectations?
So how do you frame those expectations?
Okay. I might say something like, you say you don't have a great deal of experience in working with paid professional speakers. Would it help if I gave you maybe a spectrum of helping you understand the landscape in its entirety? They say, yeah, sure. I say, well, if we took maybe like a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like a Barack Obama, an Oprah, somebody like that coming in. And then a 1 being somebody who's maybe just come out of a corporate role, getting started in their professional career. Somebody up at a 10 might be like $400,000. That's what they might command for a single speech. And down at the 1 end of the level, you might be looking at somebody that's maybe at the $500, the $1,500, the $2,500 range. Now, I'm not a level 10 speaker. I'm currently a level 6 working on becoming a level 7. Is that the kind of level of speaker that you might be looking for?
Very interesting. It's such a great frame.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just a frame to open up a conversation.
Yeah.
And
how do you handle it if they have worked with a lot of folks that might be a level 6 or a 7?
Right. Well, I'm just going to assume that they're good with my fee.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, I don't have any further positioning to be able to do because they know what they're getting into. They're an experienced
They've
buyer.
already paid Ron, they've paid Mel,
Right.
So you know what their fees are generally.
Think of it like a restaurant, right? If you or I go into a restaurant, we look at the menu. If there's a glass of wine or something that we want to be able to drink, we don't overanalyze the price list. We just say that's the one I would like, and we move forward with it because that's the one we would like. Yeah. We're not looking at the $16 versus the $18 versus the $22 glass and letting that guide our decision.
Yeah.
We read the left-hand side of the menu, and we don't care so much about the right-hand side of the menu because we're experienced buyers. We know what it might cost to be able to be in that environment. That's the same with a lot of meeting planners. For a lot of meeting planners, if they want you and you and only you, they don't care whether you're 15, whether you're 25, whether you're 32,500.
Yep.
For many, if it's you they want, providing that you're in play, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
What I found to be interesting, though, is if they come to you first, typically they have a speaker budget. Not a budget for me.
Right.
A budget for the speakers. So if I'm more than what they maybe anticipated that they wanted to pay, but they still want me, what they do is they don't challenge me on my fee, they reduce the expectation of what they might pay the other 2 speakers at the event. And that's why it's nice to be first.
Yeah, it sure is. So how do you discover or uncover how their motivations are or how much they know about you going in to the conversation? Because as you said, if a bureau calls and said, listen, Acme Corporation requested you, they want you, well, that tells you a lot.
Right.
And that's going to help you navigate that conversation.
Yeah.
If it's, if it's a bureau and they're just putting you and 9 other people in front of that client, totally different conversation. So how do you uncover those specifics?
If I'm one of the 10, I view that like a lottery ticket. I'm in the game. Some I'm going to win, some I'm going to lose. So what? I don't view that as the strategic part of my business. The strategic part of my business for the bureau stuff is to build better relationships with the bureaus so that what they're not doing is putting me on a list of 9 others. They are reaching into some of their clients and saying, Phil's your guy.
Yeah. Even proactively before there's a gig, you say, listen, Phil's the guy for the next one. Make sure you come. We'll talk about it. We'll get him on the schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the other stuff, it's just that first question. What is it about me and my work that makes you think that I might be a good fit for the event? That question.
Same question.
It's the same question. And it unpacks.
Yeah.
Sometimes you bump into a meeting planner. They're like, I don't know. I was just browsing on Google and you came up and we liked one of your videos. All right, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, 3 of our friends have seen you speak. Sometimes it's one of the team was at an event that you were at in 2008, and they're always looking for an opportunity to be able to bring you on board.
And that same question applies to all of those
every
situations.
single one of them.
Yeah.
All I'm looking for is context before I present any of my content.
Yeah.
Right. Without that frame of them saying, well, this is where I'm at, I can't then help them in their decision-making process.
Yeah.
And that's my goal. My goal is not to sell me as the speaker. My goal is to help assist their decision-making process.
Excellent. And when they say, so what would you talk about? How do you handle that? What do you do? Because, some speakers will start to go into, all of a sudden they start doing their speech.
Unpacking the speech.
Which is not particularly productive.
My first response is, great question. If you want a short answer, I don't know. What I need to understand more about is what are your goals and objectives for the event? Having delivered over 2,500 presentations, there's a chance that I might have something in my back catalogue that would be useful to you, but I've never delivered the same speech twice. So what I'd look to be able to do is to customize something that was unique towards your circumstances. So we just dive back into what they're hoping to be able to achieve. Yeah. Sometimes they don't know. So we start to then be able to dive into some of the other constraints. So where are you thinking of this sitting within the agenda? How many people are there in the audience? What happens before? What happens afterwards? Is this a kickoff or is this a closing? Is this some meat or some content that exists within the middle of the piece?
Yeah.
If there was something you wish that your corporate execs could say to the audience that they don't have the ability to be able to say, what might that thing be? See, I use that as a great trigger for somebody to be able to get to book me. If there was something you wish your exec team could say to your audience that they're not in the position to be able to say, what would that thing be?
Yeah.
If I can position my my talk towards the ability to be able to address that elephant in the room and do it without the corporate red tape, they'll pick me.
So one of the, I'm very happy that you said that it's a stupid question when you say, what's your budget? I like that you're so blunt on that. What are some of the other mistakes that people make, or things that they probably shouldn't do that may be interfering with their ability to get booked?
Okay. We're going to do some more on the fee stuff. I'll talk about that in a second. But I think a bigger mistake is to think that you're all things to all people. And I see it even in some of our speaker communities that we're bumped into together online. Is like somebody says, I got this gig and it's over here and it has a budget of this, that has a topic of that. And then you see people volunteering for it and it's not just slightly left of what I believe their area of expertise with. It's like
a hard U-turn. Yeah,
like,
right. And someone usually speaks on like healthcare, and this thing is on sales to engineers.
Sales to engineers with diversity in the workplace. And you're like, and they told me that they were a 25 grand speaker. This has got a straight up offer of $7,000 on it. And you're like, this is telling me a very different story. And I'm okay if that story is true.
Yeah.
But the trouble is I can't refer somebody if I don't know what they're for.
Yeah.
So that's the mistake, is people don't know the answer to two simple questions. The two simple questions that people should know the answer to is, who are the people that they help? And what are the problems that they solve for them? And the answer can't be everybody and everything. Right? It needs to be cleaner and clearer than that. People get scared by that, but it's nothing more than the tip of an arrow. Behind that tip of the arrow is a ton of weight, and a ton of experience, and a ton of skill, and a ton of options of what you could be able to create otherwise. I have probably the biggest tip of my arrow is my work in and around word choices and magic words and exactly what to say. I very rarely get booked to deliver an exactly what to say speech. It's always the takeaway. It's always the thing that people are left with. It's always the thing that becomes, to Jay Baer's point of view, a talk trigger that people go on and be able to go and share with others. It's not actually my core content. It's just the thing that pierces the market because everybody accepts the fact that people need to know exactly what to say. It's a universal truth.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. You spent about 4 hours with a big group of our students a few months ago, and I don't always sit in when we have a guest teacher, just because
you have a business to run.
Yeah, and it gives me an opportunity to have a break. But I sat in for that because I wanted to see your work live and in person. And I do remember thinking that. I said, oh wow, it's actually really quite brilliant, because his content is really deep and focused, and it's not just about exactly what to say, but everybody was leaving there saying, oh, I know exactly what to say.
That's it.
It was really quite lovely.
Other big mistake, and let's bring it back to fees, is people not setting on a fee. I think every speaker should have a fee. It might not be the money that you always get for every given speech, but you should know what you're worth.
Yeah.
And I don't mind what that number is. You have to just decide what that number is for you. And there may well be examples where you work for less than your fee, but you should never work for less than the combined value of your fee.
Say that again. You should never work for less than the combined value of your fee.
Yeah,
what does that mean?
What I mean by that. So a conversation with a guy in one of my mastermind groups, a guy called Bruce. He is a 15 grand speaker. He's now decided he's a 15 grand speaker. At the start of this conversation, he says, I typically charge between like 12 and 18. Funnily enough, he speaks on ethics and integrity. And I'm like, hold on. You speak on ethics and integrity and you can't tell me what your fee is. That is perhaps lacking in ethics and integrity. I've got an issue. So this got my back up a little in a fun, playful kind of way. And he had an issue where a client that he wanted to speak for had offered him $5,000. Now, this is a challenge, right? Is if he takes the gig at $5,000, what has he just said to every single other client about what his fee is? If he takes the gig at $5,000, to me, he's a $5,000 speaker. What you can do by alternative, though, is you can ask to be able to create a value exchange.
Yes.
And the play to be able to do this, and I've taught people to do this a number of times, is to throw down a challenge to the client. It runs something like this, is My speaking fee is $15,000. I understand that you can currently offer $5,000. And the way I see it is we have two options. Now, absolutely, I want to speak at the event, and I've penciled it in on my calendar. Perhaps either you can go away and see what you can do to be able to find some extra funds to get it towards my fee, or here's a list of 20 different things that I would see as being valuable, that if you can come up with some success in some of these areas, I may be happy to take these in lieu of the $10,000.
What are some of those things? What might some of those things be for you?
Right. I mean, they're different things for different people. You get to choose. But say, for example, that you are looking to be able to go through a pivot in your branding and your video content is insufficient. 3-camera video shoot on the right stage would be wonderful. Commitment to be able to move forward with the purchase of a bulk order of books, distribution and content through maybe trade publication or magazine, access to delegate contact details, opportunity to be able to get sponsor branding in and around the event. Do you get some space within the expo hall? Can they be able to perhaps put something out to their email list about you and your work and your presence at the event ahead of time? What's happening with regards to professional photos at the event? Can you capture some of those? Is there an opportunity for you to get a meet and greet with some of the key sponsors that could lead towards future work? Would they be prepared to commit to maybe some further training work for you, or to be able to purchase any of your online courses or something for some follow-up work that means that this would be worthwhile? Can you bring maybe some other people along to the event? Do they have a sponsorship package that would give access towards you being a guest on their podcast? Or like explore the opportunities of everything they have in the list. But what I want to do is to give them the biggest list of stuff.
Yeah.
And then say, I want you to think about what you might be able to do and come back and make me an offer.
Yes. So you're not asking for it.
No.
You're saying here's a list
we've got
of
a gap.
Right.
We got a gap. I want to be able to do it.
Here are some of the things that might fill that gap.
Correct.
Now,
Go play.
What can you offer?
You go play. And almost always, I'm impressed by the size of the list that comes back. Better than that, though, it's a joyful experience for everybody involved in the negotiation. They had fun putting this together. They realized that when you show up, they got a $15,000 speaker for $5,000.
Yep.
I got an email back from Bruce when he did this just 2 days ago. They took 3 days to be able to come back with their offer. He asked for 12 potential things. He got 7 of the 12 to a combined value of $23,000.
Nice.
So he's happy, they're happy, everybody wins.
Yeah.
But what he's now decided is he's a $15,000 speaker. And
Good.
he will never do anything for other than $15,000. Now he can donate a $15,000 speech for all I'm concerned.
And he might take some of it in kind.
Correct.
You know, the way that you were just articulating.
And I even do that now. Like I might deliver 4 or 5 speeches a year that I don't charge a dime for. What do I typically do on those is I invoice with 100% discount.
Yep.
Just to be able to create the perception of value towards the other person.
And on the invoice, do you articulate why the discount?
Yeah. And it changes the way you're treated. You're a free speaker, you're a pain in the ass. You're a $20,000 speaker that gifted the speech, you're a hero.
It's true. It's true. It's really remarkable. I think if I had been more academic when I was in school, when I was younger, I probably would have ended up in social sciences because I find human behavior fascinating and just bizarre.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
It's super interesting. And if people can take anything from our conversation that we're having here right now, I want you to see how much fun I have with this stuff.
Yeah.
It is straight up play. It's not there's a right way and a wrong way to be able to do it. Every conversation, every interaction, every opportunity to be able to win business with a client is a game. And that game is laced with lessons and laced with opportunity. But because it's a game, I can still be playful with it. Is the second we start to be able to stack this is that, I have to get this one. Then that's where it starts to become a dangerous place.
Yeah.
And a speaker playing from a position of desperation, that's straight up ugly.
It's tough, especially, because your role at that event is very often to be in a leadership position or a mentorship position or just a straight up teacher.
Yeah.
And a lack of confidence doesn't really support those roles.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you might not be nervous.
Oh, you got to be nervous.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, even before I do a podcast interview like this, I often get a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, why? I mean, I've done it, 100 times.
Right.
Actually, probably 1,000 times, given the number of podcasts that I've gone on. I know you well. I'm prepared. So it's in my training facility. There's nothing that is out of control or could be so problematic that something bad could happen.
No.
But it's normal.
I think the reasons that we find those nerves are probably maybe at least threefold. Is firstly, it's because you care.
Yeah.
The bigger thing, though, is that because you have versions or levels of success that exist within your mind of what could happen, what could be done, what you could get from any one of these opportunities.
Yeah.
And because you play out all those different variations of what it could be, now you've created unknowns that didn't exist.
That's true, actually.
And that's what the nerves come from. But that's, again, what gets you into a state of play that says, actually, now what I've done is I've broken away the shackles of what right is.
Yeah.
Let me see what might happen. I'm nervous to get to the end.
Yeah.
To find out what actually really happened.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons that we do a fair amount of improv with our students. When I was in grad school at NYU for acting, the first year, most of our time, I'd say 85% of our time, was spent on play. And they actually called it play.
Love it.
So we didn't do improv, we did games.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to teach us how to play. Because if over the course of the 3 years, they teach you the craft, so that you have a toolbox and an instrument that can, do all the different things that you want to do as a performer, but you can't play, you're generally not going to be transformational.
No.
And so that's why we spend so much time playing. And the same thing we do here. And it's one of the things, especially for folks that don't come from that kind of creative background, that at first can be very intimidating, but in fact becomes liberating. So what, for so many years, I really thought about transformation as our primary focus.
Yeah.
But more recently, I've been thinking about it as liberation. Because really what we're doing is we're liberating, the best parts of ourselves so that we can play in any situation or any environment that we're in, and play the right role.
That's it.
So, with that said, let's talk a little bit about books.
Okay.
You've been very successful. There's no transition there. It's just let's go to books. So, you've been very successful selling books into the environments that you're speaking in.
Yes.
It's one of the things you've done very well. So, I'd love you to just unpack your history with book writing and book sales, and then also what you think your future looks like with respect to books.
Okay. So we go back in history. First book I wrote in 2011 was a book called Toolbox, and it was a self-published book. And I wrote the book because I needed to write a book. And it's at that point in career that if you haven't got a book, then who are you? So I got my book out and I did the thing that lots of people do with their first book, which is like, how do I get almost everything that I know about almost everything I know between the covers of a piece of, of a book?
I'm actually reading someone's book right now. It's still in an early draft stage, but I'm reading it because he wants me to direct the whole keynote.
Yeah.
For those who are watching, you can see that I'm holding up my fingers.
Yeah, we got like a 4-inch depth.
About 4 inches right now. It's going to take me quite some time to work through. And the first thing that I'm going to be talking to him about is how can we cut this down?
Right.
Yeah.
So that was an early book, and it did its job, right? It established me as an author. It was probably one of the key things that allowed me to be able to move my business from just a UK-based speaking and training business to be a global speaking and training business. It gave me that passport. Mm-hmm. My second book was a book called Magic Words. And Magic Words was a bet. So I was in a mastermind group and people were talking about how difficult it was to be able to get a book to a point of market. Me being the kind of person I am sometimes lets my big mouth get me into trouble. And I made a statement that said, look, you could turn a book around as little as 7 days. Like, I'm pretty sure that, if I really needed to, within 7 days, I could have a book listed. I could have it in bestseller status. I can make a little bit of money. I don't know what you guys are all messing about at. And they called me on my bluff. So I did it. I took a 2-page PDF that I'd used for a training the day before that was a training towards telecommunications companies, admin staff on the phones, the customer service, where they wanted me to be able to teach them to be more sales focused without feeling like they're salespeople. So I created a 2-page PDF as their takeaway for that, which was 17 sequences of words that could allow you to have more influence and impact on your conversations. So me turning that into a book was me padding out a 2-page PDF. I turned it into what is nothing more than a glorified pamphlet. That book was called Magic Words. We put it out with a little bit of nous and marketing behind it. And within maybe 10 days, we had 120,000 downloads on it on the free Kindle edition.
All right. So you said it was a glorified pamphlet, and
That's
maybe you're being a little self-effacing.
Maybe.
Because if 130,000 or 140,000 people download it that quickly, there must be some value in it.
There was certainly value, but it didn't meet the typical book description.
Yeah, so you mean more in size or scale.
Size and scale, it was concise. You could get through it in like 20 minutes. But it met my objective at that point of time. And my objective for it was, number one, to politely respond to my mastermind group with what was possible. 2, to have a simple takeaway for dozens of events. 3, to have a low-priced giveaway that had perceived tangible value that could get me through the door of dozens of different things. So that's what that book did for me.
And clearly, you don't seem to be worried about perfection.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, you look at it and say, okay, what is enough for this reader to give them what they need in this particular these parameters?
There's a job description for every product that exists within my business. My evolution with books came with my geographic move to the US. So with me wanting to be able to come here and shrink my business geographically, I want to do less international work, etc. I wanted to be able to build a footprint here in North America. I needed a reason to be able to get people interested in who I was. So I thought, well, what I should probably do is to do a new book. And then when I was thinking about doing a new book, I thought, well, why am I trying to reinvent an idea that is untrusted? What if I take what I call my big gun, right? And I shoot my big gun first, which is magic words. So why don't I take that and write it the way it should have been written and actually give it the level of refinement that it would have needed first time around? And that's exactly what to say. So exactly what to say was the product of a second level edit on magic words, rewritten in the way it should have been done with the correct level of production attached towards it to mean that it would. And I think there's a really important lesson in that for speakers is we quite often think we need new content, yet refined content of what was great for us 5 years ago probably is just as new as it needs to be. And your ability to deliver that same content today is better than you could have done back then. That's what makes it new. And we want signature stories. We want signature work if we're to build a long-term brand. So that was that book. As we stand today, we've just grossed out over 500,000 copies of that and now into distribution. It's the most listened to book on Audible for 2018. It's an hour and 15 minutes long as a read. It breaks many of the standard traditions of what a book should be. And it's now a serious, genuine revenue stream for my business. Behind that book is exactly how to sell,
which is right here,
and exactly where to start, which are 2 other strategic plays. So,
just FYI, I don't know if you should, for the people who are watching, you can see like almost every other page is dog-eared, and then there's notes in there, and it's highlighted. So there's that. I think this was Amy did this. This all worked through this and made all those notes in it.
Now that's a playbook that will never sell the volume of quantities that exactly what to say would sell. What it does do though within my business system is it strategically backs me up as saying that there is more depth to this guy's content than that's in that tiny little book. It actually is the hammer behind the nail. Sits there for me purposefully. So I don't ever have expectations of that doing 500,000 copies. We're probably at 25, 30,000 copies with that. And I'm already good with that.
Yeah.
But it exists in the portfolio for credibility. And then exactly where to start, the third book in the trilogy, is a book for entrepreneurs to help them get an idea from nowhere and into reality. Where does that sit within the portfolio? Well, I didn't have a lot that talked towards entrepreneur space. Yet it's something that I care passionately about. It's something that I get asked a lot of questions about as to, hey, how do I get started with this? Or what did you do when you first started? Or I've got this idea. And the biggest thing I was sick of in my travels is, the people you meet at a bar or whilst waiting for a plane that nearly did something. They find out the kind of work that you do and they tell you the story about the thing they nearly did once.
Yeah.
I wanted an answer for that. So that's where that book sits. But now the trilogy allows me to have this exactly brand. And what they really do is they sit as a triangle, where any one of them is the tip and the other 2 are the weight that sits behind it, depending upon which audience I'm looking to be able to speak towards. So that's been very much the journey with books up until where we are right now. The most exciting next part of the journey is what we're doing to be able to do customized and niched versions of exactly what to say. We're now at a point where we have 18 customized corporate editions of exactly what to say. that exist within niche industries. They're not available within public domain. We still sell thousands of copies of them. Organizations use them as a training tool. We do them in their color palette. I rework the examples towards their industry, etc.
And you're able to do that because you're controlling the publishing and the distribution process.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also, I'm close enough to the content to have the ability to be able to make that a quick edit. It becomes an almost no-brainer upsell to some of my core clients. It becomes a way for me to get through the door of some new clients. And I think over the next 2 years, we might have 150, 200 different special editions of exactly what to say.
That's great.
And I'm going to ride that horse like Psy rides Gangnam Style, I think is...
Is that the expression?
That's what I'm looking at. That's my analogy on it. Is Psy wrote that song Gangnam Style, and it's about the only thing he's ever famous for. Like, I don't think sometimes if you do something that has enough longevity and is a perennial bestseller that way around, is you don't need to keep reinventing anything. You can just ride that one piece of content for a career.
Well, I'd say that one of the mistakes that I made over the years is writing too many books.
That's right.
So I wrote Book Yourself Solid in 2005, and I was very fortunate that it hit in a real way. And then I kept writing more books.
Yeah.
And, they did fine. They hit lists, yada, yada. But I could have stayed just with Book Yourself Solid for a decade or more and not taken any time to do any other books and been just as financially successful, if not more, because I would have been more focused. And also... sometimes you confuse the marketplace if you're doing too many things.
It's like having too many speeches, too many areas of expertise.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
I agree. I'm more interested right now in less than just the books piece, but looking at other content platforms. So if you look at the likes of Audible, you look at Netflix, you look at even Masterclass, I'm fascinated at how these subscription models have grown massively well over the last 4 or 5 years. I'm also very aware that their biggest challenge right now is churn. Mm-hmm. And within that challenge of churn is quality content. One thing that will keep people coming back time and time again is entertaining educational content. And I'm seeing huge opportunity to be able to create that quality of information utilizing somebody else's train set, as opposed to say it always needs to come through me. So the distribution channel for education always used to be traditional publishing.
Yeah.
I think that distribution channel is now significantly changed. And I'm looking at saying, how do I create content that is unique within those spaces? So I did my Audible original, which I'm super proud of, which is the most challenging thing I've ever done. And I'm doing another secret project with Audible that comes out in Q1 of 2020. And actively exploring opportunities to say, if Netflix needed something from me, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And trying to get close enough to the conversations to let them come up with something that is their idea to use me, but I created the idea for them to be able to think was their idea.
Well done.
So working on that kind of stuff. And then same again with Masterclass. Like you look at that platform there right now, there will be, in the next 2 years' time, somebody showing up teaching people how to be able to communicate effectively from a stage. I'd love that to be Michael and Amy Port, right? That would be the coolest thing. But currently, they are having the problem discussion in their corporations. They're not having the solution discussion within their corporations. And I think that's the future of where a lot of content distribution is going to be going. And I'm trying to get ahead of that race rather than thinking about what's my next book.
Yeah, it's smart. So a couple questions, or maybe one question about book sales with the speech.
Speech, sure.
Because that's something that's... very immediate and important to listeners, to increase the number of books they sell and still get their fee when they're going in for a gig.
Absolutely. And I do pretty good at this. So about 85% of the gigs that I book buy books. And they buy books for every attendee. I've tried everything through the years. So I've tried the back of the room book sale. It's one of the ugliest, worst, painful experiences of my life, where you've just crushed it on stage and now you're like, you got change for a 20. Right? That stuff is like avoid that at all costs.
It's just like a step away from putting out a hat.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So anything you can do to avoid that stuff, absolutely get away from. My route to being able to introduce books to almost every event is that I don't make it a condition of sale pre-contract. Mm-hmm. So books aren't talked about ahead of time. We close the gig, etc. The pre-planning call is my time to sell books. I have one question that is killer, and it works for me almost every time. And the question is this. What's your plan for books?
And they say, what do you mean?
That's it.
Yeah.
And I say, well, typically at the end of the event, we've referenced some of the key information from the books. And what I always get asked is delegates say, where can I get a copy of the book? Now, the most successful way we can do it is to create a book in the room for everybody. Or would you like me to point them towards Amazon so that they can go buy copies for themselves?
And generally, what's their answer?
We hadn't thought about that. How much is it? And what will they be? And how does that work? So I say, how many people are attending? And they tell me. And I say, well, we can do this really cool thing that if we do books for every attendee, then following the event, we'll have the books available for them outside, and I'll do a small signing and a meet and greet and some Q&A. And they're like, wow, that'd be amazing. And then I tell them the price, and they say, great. And then I send them a payment link, and they buy the books.
Yeah. That's it.
It's that easy.
Yeah. It's very, very strategic to separate the book sales conversation from the speech conversation, because they are two different things.
They're two different things, and I think,
and they've already gone through the pain of the fee. They're like, okay, that was a couple months ago. They don't even remember that at this point.
So if you want lessons on upselling anything, then you look to the masters. The masters of the upsell are a little business that was founded by Ray Kroc. Now, many people think that it's a fast food business, but really it's a real estate business that's built with a fast food empire on top of it. And the business we're talking about is McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And everything you need to know about upselling anything is taught through their would you like to go large or would you like to supersize story.
Yeah.
And thinking about those lessons is, firstly, at what point in the transaction do they invite somebody to go large or supersize?
After they've ordered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After they've ordered and before they've
paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the window. How much extra do they invite somebody to pay in percentage terms of the overall transaction?
It's smaller.
Relatively small, like 15, 20, 25% of what they've already agreed to be able to commit to be able to purchase. Is how often do they ask the question?
Every time?
Every single time. Yeah. What happens if they get a no response?
I don't know. I don't go to McDonald's. What do they say?
There is zero consequences.
Oh, I see.
There is no pushback like, oh, you should, because Jimmy's on French fries and they're banging.
They don't keep going.
There's no further like, let's try and explore and push this idea in. Their job is to be able to insert it. The final question I tend to ask of people is, the people at McDonald's, are they more skilled or less skilled than you?
I think most people would assume less.
I think they'd like to be able to give an answer to that. But if the people at McDonald's can invite people to be able to purchase something extra at the point of transaction after they've ordered and before they paid, they can do it every single time without care or consequence of the result. My guess is more often than not in that scenario, in that skill set, they are way more skilled than you are.
Yes.
So the challenge I would put to everybody listening is, can you raise your game in that area?
Yeah.
I have 6 figures of incremental revenue in my business that exist for books that appeared at events that nobody asked me for. They wouldn't have been missing. Client wouldn't have said,
I see. Yeah, they didn't come to you.
It wasn't their idea.
Yeah.
I gave them the
Your
idea.
question was, what do you plan to do about books?
That's it. And I put something on the agenda that previously they had no consideration towards.
Yeah. It's great.
Real money.
It's great. It's really, really great. Look, I could sit here and talk to you all day about this, and I actually will, because I'm not letting you leave. But I will turn off the cameras and the microphones. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you?
If people want to join the conversation, Twitter, I'm not really on.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn and Instagram are 2 channels that I show up very much in person, so we can join conversation there. You want to find out more about me and my work, come to the website. It's philmjones.com. If people want to take a deeper dive on any of this sales stuff, probably the best place for them to be able to go right now is to my Audible original,
yeah,
which is
tremendous.
How to Persuade and Get Paid, and it was recorded live at the Minetta Lane Theatre. I got to perform off Broadway. I'm not even an actor. One of the proudest things I've ever done, probably the best piece of work I've ever put into the world. So go check that out.
Isn't it also the most popular Amazon original at this point? Isn't it up there?
Within the business space, yes.
In the business space, yes. Well, congratulations. That was I know how important that was
it was a
to
ton
you,
of work.
And you really
you guys helped a ton as well.
Well, thank you. We just answered a few questions.
That's enough sometimes, right?
All right. So thank you, Phil. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
My pleasure.
In the meantime, keep thinking big about who you are and about what you offer the world. Bye for now.